Let us now proceed with the other part of the amended tax code. This portion deals with the tax incentives given to certain industries and businesses. This is more of a consolidation of all tax laws that give incentives to certain industries. Kasi for the prior years, the government has passed several laws giving tax incentives or breaks to certain industries, locations, and activities, but it is now time for us to have a standardized or simplified application of tax incentives. Kasi kung titingnan natin, maraming investment promotion agencies in the Philippines, and there are similarities and differences in giving tax perks and incentives. But with this new title of the tax code, which is Title 13, there will be a simplified and easy reference to the tax incentive programs of the government. But a full discussion of this tax incentive will require significant amount of time, definitely. There will be a separate webinar for this, but I will show you a glimpse of what are the important changes or aspects of this amendment. Remember that this is not only intended to impose burden to businesses, yung tax, but also to encourage or attract investors to do business in certain industries or locations that would benefit also the government. It only means that the government is delegating certain economic activities or management to private entities and in effect benefits both parties. I would like to tell you also that in terms of incentives, it focuses on exporters and domestic market enterprises. And here, there is a comparison of how the previous laws affect the exporters and domestic market enterprises and with the CREATE law. So let us now proceed. So in the CREATE Act, there is a change as to the approval of incentives. Prior to the CREATE Act, it's only the Investment Promotion Agency who approves the incentives. But upon the effectivity of the CREATE Act, so this one is previously, it's the Investment Promotion Agencies, but with the effect of the CREATE Act, it is the Investment Promotion Agency or the review of the Fiscal Incentives Board. Also, in this section, Section 292, okay, it highlights that prior to the CREATE Act, the Fiscal Incentives Review Board does not have the oversight power, okay, over the investment promotion agencies. But now, all those incentives will be reviewed. As to the industries covered prior to the CREATE Act, it's based on the Investment Promotion Agency's charter or defined in the Investment Priority Plan. But in the CREATE Act, we have to determine the industry whether it's indicated in the Strategic Investment Priority Plan. We also have here the income tax holiday, definitely. This is one of the incentives received by industries, whether exporters or domestic market enterprise. But prior to the CREATE Act, the income tax holiday from 4 to 6 years. Pero for the upon the effectivity of the CREATE Act, we have here 4 years to 7 years. And take note, kapag halimbawa yung entity decides to expand, there may be extension of income tax holiday, okay, prior to the CREATE Act. 2 more years and 3 more years for expanding firms, but in the CREATE Act, there's no more extension of income tax holiday kapag nag-expand ka. However, I'd like to show to you that there will be additional incentives for relocation outside of the NCR and in disaster conflict areas as provided by the CREATE Act, which is not actually present in the previous laws. Under the CREATE Act, kapag may relocation outside of NCR, there will be additional 3 years income tax holiday to both exporters and domestic market enterprise. But if there will be relocation to areas recovering from disaster or conflict areas, there will be additional 2 more years income tax holiday for both industries, exporters and domestic market enterprise. We also have here, yung as to the income tax holiday, yung option actually ng mga entities, whether exporter or domestic market enterprise, we have the income tax holiday, but actually for exporters, we have this option, income tax holiday plus 5% preferential rate. So prior to the CREATE Act, this is the scenario. 5% gross income earned may be granted to exporters, most especially those registered in PEZA. And then this is what I have discussed earlier, forever na pwedeng ma-avail nung mga PEZA registered entities. But for domestic market enterprise, actually, once matapos ng income tax holiday, they will now be subjected to the regular corporate income tax rate. Pero with the CREATE Act, yung 5% preferential rate will be only for 10 years. So after the income tax holiday, pwede ka na maging 5% but a maximum of 10 years for exporters. But it does not apply to domestic market enterprise. Okay? But here, after the recognition or enjoyment of the income tax holiday and then the 5% preferential rate, di ba? As shown to you, forever pag exporter for domestic market enterprise, it's not applicable. Pero with the CREATE Act, there's already a limit. So 14 to 17 years, yung total number of years that may be enjoyed by exporters. So the first 7 years is for the income tax holiday, and then the next 10 years would be the 5% preferential rate or the gross income earned tax rate. Okay, but it does not apply to domestic market enterprise kasi income tax holiday lang ang pwede nilang ma-enjoy. So, attorney, paano yun? Is there an option? Well, ang sabi naman, it refers to a particular enterprise or business entity. If there will be another investor who would be doing business with the same kind of business na under the strategic investment priority plan, they may be entitled again to income tax holiday. So it depends kung mayroong bagong corporation na may involved to that kind of business or industry. And also, similar to the income tax holiday, the CREATE Act, there is a modification as to the deduction. Prior to the CREATE Act kasi, there is no enhanced deduction granted to these enterprises. Exporters and domestic market enterprise may only enjoy income tax holiday, and then for exporters, meron siyang 5% preferential rate. Pero for exporters and domestic market enterprise under the CREATE Act, they have, take note, the option. Kasi yung first option na discuss natin kanina is yung 5% for, take note, 5% for exporters. Pero for the enhanced deduction, ano attorney enhanced deduction? This one is claimed by both exporters and domestic market enterprise, but the tax, okay, will be the regular corporate income tax. Wala yung 5%. Nagkaroon lang ng additional deduction or let's say increased percentage of deduction na makiklaim. And then after arriving at the net taxable income, it will be subject to the regular corporate tax rate. So under the enhanced deduction, okay, as provided by the CREATE Act, for exporters, they may enjoy the enhanced deduction for a period of 10 years, which is similar actually to the 5% gross income earned. So we have to differentiate. Sa exporter, they may enjoy 5% gross income earned or the enhanced deduction. Okay, yung 5% gross income earned, it's based on the gross income or gross profit. 5% of that will be the tax due in lieu of all internal revenue tax. Pero for the CREATE Act, the corporation or the exporter, instead of the 5%, it will be subject to the regular corporate tax rate. Pero yung mga deduction na kiniklaim, okay, in arriving at the net taxable income, will have an additional deduction. Okay? Yun yung tinatawag nating enhanced deduction. For domestic market enterprise, mag-enjoy niya lang is income tax holiday. And then for the next 5 years, pwede siyang mag-claim ng enhanced deduction. So in this particular incentive, wala yan sa prior to the CREATE Act. And then right now, the maximum number of years that may be enjoyed by the exporters if they opt for the enhanced deduction would be 14 to 17 years, while for domestic market enterprises, it would be 9 to 12 years. Also, when we talk about enhanced deduction, so as I mentioned, these are the deductions na pwedeng i-claim before arriving at the net taxable income, So tatanggalin na natin yung 5% preferential rate kung enhanced deduction ang gagamitin nung domestic market enterprise or exporter, So as to the power expense na i-claim, they may be entitled to 150%. For labor expense, previously it's 150% already, same as to the CREATE Act. For the training expense, you may now be entitled to claim it at 200% of the actual deduction. Research and development, 200%, but the deduction shall be 200% for labor expense if the activity is located in less developed areas. So actually, the government has already released kung ano yung mga less developed areas. But it says here, it does not apply to TIEZA, SBMA, CDC, and APECO, yung 200%. Also, the other enhanced deductions would be domestic input expense hanggang 150%. Reinvestment allowance to manufacturing industry. So, what does it mean? if the company is engaged in manufacturing, no, and then there is profit, what will happen is if the profit will be reinvested in the company, 50% of that profit may be claimed as deduction within 5 years from the time of reinvestment. So it means na di ba meron tayong tinatawag na, let's say, dividends na ibibigay sa mga stockholders just in case merong kita yung business. Pero instead of declaring dividends, ni-reinvest yung profit sa company, the reinvested profit may be claimed as deduction pa. We also have depreciation allowance, additional 10% for buildings, 20% for machinery. And I'd like to tell you na for those industries that are enjoying these tax incentives prior to the CREATE Act, na let's say income tax holiday, you can only enjoy the income tax holiday as scheduled, no, prior to the effectivity of the CREATE Act if you're both exporter or domestic market enterprise. But for those firms who are already subject to 5% preferential rate, you can, as exporter or domestic market enterprise, you can claim it or you can use it until 10 years na lang, okay, from the effectivity of the CREATE Act. So this one, ito yung transition period. So for those industries, ano ba yung pwedeng gawin? Well, actually, you enjoy the income tax holiday and then maximize the 5%. Pero kung halimbawang you are interested in enjoying more other incentives, why not diversify and do other activities that are allowed to be enjoyed as subject to tax incentives or perks, no? So you diversify, kayo na bahalang mag-isip kung paano magiging setup. Alright? So that covers our discussion about the CREATE Act. I hope you learned a lot from our discussion, but I'd like to tell you that this is just a primer. What we have to do is to discuss also the implementing rules and regulations of the BIR. But as I mentioned earlier, what's really important is for us to know the law. Okay? Kasi dun dapat magiging basihan ni BIR in implementing the CREATE Act. So with that, I'll be turning over the screen to our host for questions or clarifications from our participants.